got people here, and all of you lovely people across Australia and beyond. So I'm not quite sure where to look. So I'll be looking, I've got my here, but I also want to acknowledge the people here in the room. And I have a power slide as well to try and keep me on track. When Tina mentioned that I've been practicing for 30 years, it just means I'm old, not experienced. I just hear 30 and I'm like, whoa. So let's start with setting our motivation. Again, can I just ask, is everybody, are there newbies here? Is everybody a card-carrying Buddhist? Do you know the basics? When I say we're setting our motivation, is it like, do you need me to explain that? Well, I guess I can just say we're literally opening our heart to begin with. So expanding it beyond this current group, beyond our current needs, and just making the wish for what we do here together to become bigger and to share it out towards more. So in whatever way that makes sense to you, just taking a moment to set your motivation. So if there's issues in your life that you're struggling with now, or if there are people in your life that you'd like to have sitting here with us, then just bringing them to mind, and then thinking, expanding out to the suffering of so many others. It doesn't take us far to find it. So just holding all of that in our hearts with boundless compassion and wisdom. I will work for the welfare of all. May we be free from hunger and discord, and have joy and a world at peace. Thank you. So we'll begin with a short meditation, maybe just 5 minutes. Yeah. So I will ring the bell. So just checking that you're sitting comfortably, that your back is straight, but not tense. Just feeling the ground beneath you. And just settling into the practice. So if you do have a particular practice that you do, you can be watching the breath or just resting in open awareness, whatever works for you. Just bringing your attention into the present. And when you notice the mind is distracted, lost in thoughts, following plans, listening to things, whatever is happening, don't worry about it. Just recognize that you've been lost and bring your attention back. When you're ready, just bringing your attention back into the room. And we'll finish the meditation. Thank you for your practice. So you get to see the PowerPoint, but everybody in the room doesn't. It's really just it's just a prompt for me to try and stay on track. So I wanted to start by just asking, why did you come here this evening? You don't have to answer it out loud, but just think about it. Why did you come here this evening? I'll have a cup of tea while you're thinking.
And for those online, you're welcome to put it in the chat if you like as well.
So, I mean, at the beginning of our session this evening, we set our motivation. And that's sort of consciously bringing to mind why we are doing things. And it's an invitation then to that there's always the potential to shift it and change it and to expand it. But really, even if it's, down to getting the next piece of chocolate, and I know there's some over there, why are we doing things? Has anybody answered it? As I did say, you don't have to, but just hold it in your mind, because I'm going to tell you the answer anyway. Well, I'll ask more questions. To be happy, to be free of suffering. The reason I chose the topic about our basic goodness is because I feel, as I'm certainly speaking from my own perspective, I find it really hard to believe it's true. If everybody in this room, if everybody online said to me, "Oh, I think you're great," and then one person went, "Oh, I'm not so sure. I think you're a bit of an idiot." That's who I would gravitate towards. And I think we do tend to do that, even if we hear, we don't quite believe that we're okay. But if we do examine our motivation for doing anything, to be happy, to be free of suffering, that's actually what's driving everything that we do. It doesn't say that we get it right. And that's why the owl is here in the picture looking at it going, because the owl is there representing our wisdom, our skillful means. It's like everything we do is either with the wish to be happy or to be free of suffering. And that's loving kindness or compassion. And all of that is because it's arising out of our basic goodness. So that really is, the GPS is there all the time, but we don't often have it plugged in, and we don't often pay attention to it. So that's why the wisdom aspect is crucial. It's really will determine whether or not we're on track with it. But at its core, It's all there. Yeah. So the Four Noble Truths. What are they? Why are they important? And what have they got to do with basic goodness? So here they are, the Four Noble Truths. And the image is really important because the first Noble Truth is sitting there out on its own in isolation. And that's generally what we do. I heard Joseph Goldstein, so the first Noble Truth being the truth of suffering. And in fact, it relies on us seeing ourselves as separate. I heard Joseph Goldstein quote, I'm not sure who the quote was from, but he said, as long as you have, as long as you have a self, he will suffer, or she will suffer. So there's that little suffering self sitting there all on its own. So when we consider the Four Noble Truths, they're a package, they come together. I mean, a lot of, it's often said, well, why did the Buddha, why didn't he talk about joy? Why didn't he talk about bliss? Why start with suffering? And we can't bypass it. When we talk about opening our hearts, the opening is a breaking. It's literally a breaking open. It's not that we go out and look for suffering, don't worry, there's enough of it. But it's a turning towards it and an accepting of it and a recognition of it. Turning that compassion and loving kindness towards our own suffering. That's what's needed. So the truth of suffering. Life always involves suffering in obvious and subtle forms. Even when things seem good, we always feel an undercurrent of anxiety and uncertainty inside. I mean, I think you can come up with many examples of that. And the importance of it being that there's layers and layers and layers of it, the more obvious ones, but also the really subtle ones. And so, the Buddha talks about the suffering of getting what you want. And we're like, come on, can we have any fun? So again, it's not that you can have the chocolate, you can have you can have all the good stuff, but it's the clinging, it's the idea again that we're separate from it, so that we have to keep chasing after it. The cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is craving and fundamental ignorance. We suffer because of our mistaken belief that we are a separate, independent, solid I. The painful and futile struggle to maintain this delusion of ego is known as samsara, or cyclic existence. Jetsuma often gave an example of there's a monkey trap that's used, and I did Google it, and it did exist. Maybe, I don't know if they still do, but you've got this clay pot with a narrow neck, and inside it you put something delicious, and then you tie it to a tree. The monkey comes along, looks in, sees this beautiful, delicious thing, puts his hand in to get the lovely thing. But now he's got a fist, so he can't pull it out again. So the hunter just comes, takes him, and story over. All he's got to do is let go. Yeah. But this is all of our situations, the grasping. It again, I mean, you can have the delicious thing, but if it's coming under all of those, like if the grasping is there, that's the attachment. Then the aversion is the recognition that the hunters are coming and I want to get away from them, thank you very much. And the ignorance that's keeping the whole thing going is the just not knowing that all I've got to do is let go. And so it's all playing out there, the ignorance, attachment, and aversion. And we are the hunter, we are the monkey. This is happening in our own minds, in our own clinging and grasping all the time. And it's all a mistake. But knowing that it's a mistake and really getting that, knowing it intellectually and actually experiencing it are, it's not instantaneous. You can't go, oh, silly me, what was I thinking? So this is why we need a path. Oh, sorry, first of all, we need to know that we can end the suffering. The good news is that our obscurations are temporary. They are like passing clouds that obscure the sun of our enlightened nature, which is always present. So that's our innate goodness. It's already there. Therefore, suffering can end because our obscurations can be purified. An awakened mind is always available to us. So it's good news. And the path. So by living ethically, which would be the foundation of not harming, practicing meditation, and developing wisdom. So wisdom really is at the core of it. It's not just about being good. It's not about being nice. It's not just about the cultivation of virtues, but it's the necessary underpinning of wisdom that breaks through the confused mind. So we can take exactly the same journey to enlightenment and freedom from suffering that the Buddhas do. We too can wake up. So, in describing who are we would say many different things about ourselves. If you just think for a moment, I ask you, who are you? You say, I'm male, I'm female, I'm this, I'm that, I'm married, I'm whatever. There's a long list of things. From the Buddhist perspective, we are who are we? We are potential Buddhas. That's who we are. We are defined by our Buddha nature, our capacity to wake up. But it might not win you friends if you say I'm potential Buddha. It's only of value for us to recognize that in the context of everybody else is also potential Buddha. Everybody else, without exception. So I wanted to read you a poem, and this is a poem called "Kindness" by Naomi Shihab Ni. I think this is how her name is pronounced. Has anybody heard of her? Yeah. So she's, I think, American Lebanese, maybe, and I apologize if I haven't got that right. So this poem comes from her experience when she was on her honeymoon quite a long time ago. I think herself and her husband traveled through Central America, and it was dangerous. They were going through. All her family and friends were just saying this is not honeymoon territory. And they were traveling on a local bus, and they got stopped by bandits, and the bandits came and stole everything, that could be stolen, including their passports and money and so on. And they also killed one of the people on the bus. So this, as I say, this was quite a long time ago. So you couldn't, it wasn't easy to get everything replaced. And so Naomi and her husband discussed it, and they agreed that he would go to wherever the nearest city was to get to the consulate and so on, and try and get replacement passports. And so she was left in this, sitting in a town center, on her own, and just feeling completely at rock bottom. And a local came over to her, and they didn't even have a common language, but it was clear to her that he could see that she was distressed, and he wanted to help her. And so the depth of that connection and the recognition of that link of kindness led her to writing this poem. And she said that the poem came really spontaneously. So I'll just read it. So just contemplate it as I read it. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Oh, I've lost the last bit. I'm going to have to Google it. Gosh.
Good old Google.
Somebody's probably Googled it out there already. Can anybody Google that, please?
I'll do that. That's fine.
Thank you.
And I'll pop it in the chat.
Okay.
I know that's okay.
What was the name?
Because I need to put it in the chat. It's fine.
Okay, put it in the chat, and I'm going to read it again from the start, okay? So you don't all get distracted. Put your phones away, everybody. And I actually had meant to say that at the beginning too, to put your phones away. I will have it on my computer as well. Actually, Tina, let me find it on.
I found it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So everyone, we're going to read it again. So as you were, it's good to hear it a second time anyway.
Do you want me to put the whole thing or just the last part?
Just that last part. Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
that's fine.
Okay. So, Kindness by Naomi Shiavni. I won't tell you the backstory, you know it. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows. That's compassion. That's the turning towards the sorrow, turning towards the pain, and meeting it in a very intimate way of being okay to be with it, to bear witness to it. Because when we meet sorrow, when we meet pain, we're desperate to do something about it. We either suppress it, or exaggerate it, or ignore it, or antidote it. And the antidoting, I find that one the very interesting one, because you think, well, why would you not want to antidote it? But there's a denial going on as well. There can be a denial. I mean, you do antidote it, that's fine, take the medicines, whatever is available. But that idea that it shouldn't be there and that there's something I need to do to get rid of it is a denial of the truth of it. And that's why, going back to those little 4 lollipops, we push it over there on its own. And it's just that uncomfortable thing that's in the room that, really you need to get rid of it. But instead we need to turn towards it and be very, allow it to be there, and love it and have compassion for it. And only then can we then meet the same suffering of others once we're okay with meeting our own. So we'll do another practice. How are we doing for time? Good. Yeah. So thank you very much, Tina. That's I left out a whole chunk of the poem, so I was delighted.
It's a beautiful poem.
It is beautiful. Yeah. So we're going to do a practice on basic goodness. So just checking again that you're sitting comfortably, that your back is straight. And just allowing the body to be relaxed. Muscles soft. And if there is tension in the body, if there is pain, also allowing that. Accepting. And being curious about it. Just gently curious towards any tension or tightness that's there. Just allowing the mind to be open and present. You don't need to block what appears to your senses or to stop thinking. No need to be distracted or lost in thought. Just let your awareness be open and spacious. Just at ease with whatever is arising. Now see if you can notice the impulses that arise in your mind and body. You may feel the desire to move or to react to a thought or feeling. whatever you notice, just recognize that each passing experience is an expression of our basic goodness, of our desire to find true and lasting happiness. You don't need to change or alter your experience in any way. Simply embrace each moment, whatever arises, with spacious awareness. It's natural for the mind to get lost in thoughts and feelings. And when you notice that you have been lost, just bring your awareness back to the present moment and continue the meditation. And again, just let your mind relax into open awareness without focusing on anything in particular. Just letting it be as natural as possible. Just bringing your attention back into your room. And we'll finish the meditation. Okay, so just got a few more slides and then we can have some Q&A if anybody has questions. A question: is the Buddhist path about self-improvement?
Is that a trick question?
It could be a trick question, yeah. I think I haven't got the exact quote, but I know Pema Chodron talks about the idea of self-improvement as like a subtle aggression, I think. Again, there's you know, it can be a sense of saying I'm not okay, and that's not okay. So again, it's denial of the basic goodness. So I've got the image of the little boy learning to walk. We wouldn't say that he's on a self-improvement program. We would say that he has the capacity to walk, and right now he's not great at it, but you could say it's self-improvement, but it's only because there's an innate potential for it to arise. Yeah.
Venerable, would you say it also depends on what level of the Dharma practice and path we're talking about? Like, for someone who's starting out, it may be something that assists them in their day-to-day, so in that way it's self-improvement. Then when it gets to the higher level, it's like, well, is there really a self to improve on?
Yeah. I think there's a full package there of many different ways, and I would say it's not that when you get very advanced, there's no self and it's all of that, but it's just recognizing the again, if we hold and recognize that we're innately okay, and then we can do the self-improvement. I've got a quote coming up. Let's take a look at a couple of the quotes. They might answer your question as well. And I don't want to miss out on my slides.
Fair enough, me too.
So anger, jealousy, fear, etc. They might be second nature, but then the question is, what's your first nature? So it's like, yes, all of these things we need to improve. If we can get rid of all of these, fabulous. But the more that we align with the first nature, the more that we align ourselves with that while we're doing the self-improvement, then it's like a dismantling that's going to happen from the inside. So here's maybe your answer to your question, Tina. Each of you is perfect the way you are, and you can use a little improvement. So that's Shunryu Suzuki. He was one of the famous Japanese Zen Buddhists bringing it to America. I really like this image of the little boy sitting in his seat. So he's perfect the way he is. Everything's fine. And he could also wake up. He'd be a little bit more useful awake. So I guess that's, if we think of the Buddha is fully awake. So we would be a little bit more useful in the world. And then here's another quote, which I think also speaks to that. And this is from Sigur Kongtrul Rinpoche, who is one of Pema Chödrön's teachers. You have to understand that even though you make a lot of mistakes and you mess up in all kinds of ways, all of that is impermanent and shifting and changing and temporary. But fundamentally, your mind and heart are not guilty. They are innocent. And then Pema Chödrön saying it's okay to not be okay. The image of the knot, I tried to find an image of a snake that has a knot, because they can untie it themselves. It just unfurls. So again, I would say that's the self-improvement, is that the solution is inherent in the problem, actually. It frees itself, again, because we are innately okay. So here's my image of this. Let's say this is the contents of my mind. And a lot of people think that meditation is about just dropping all of it, emptying the mind. Or trying to meditate. I'm going to try and keep all of this under control. I'm going to try and keep it all. It's taken a bit of work, but I can keep it together. Yeah, it's all okay. Got it all under control. But this is called effort. And again, effort is arising because we don't trust that we're actually all right. So I got to keep doing something. This is the self-improvement that's a bit off track. So what we're suggesting here is this is all you've got to do. Yeah, you don't have to get rid of it. It's all there, but you've opened up a more expansive perspective around it. We don't have to get rid of our stuff. We just have to have a more expansive view of it. I know Ram Dass was often asked, you've been practicing now for decades. Have you gotten rid of your neurosis? And he went, no, it's all there, all of it. Nothing's changed. But my relationship with it has completely changed. Yeah. So that's what we're invited to do. And that relationship, that perspective, that shift, that can and will happen, is arising out of wisdom, is arising out of insight.
Venerable.
Yep.
I know it's not question and answer time, but I heard before that you do work with.
It is question and answer time. You're right on track, because I've just got to the last slide, so we can go back. Yes.
You do work with prisoners.
Yep.
And you come across as a very, very good therapist. You're like a psychologist. I don't know. It's a job description, but
yep.
Basically your analysis of the situation. Does it help them a lot when you go in there? And I used to be a monk. I used to work with prisoners,
right?
But I wasn't like my meditation, contemplating wisdom was not there, not all the way like the way it is today. And I really miss it actually. But I do like the way that you relate to. I'm talking a lot to say that.
What's your question?
Don't know now. So. Do you find that the last point that you made about it not?
Yeah.
Does that?
I do think working with prisoners, and we are all in prison, we really are, and I think that goes back to the gross and the more subtle levels of suffering, because it's like, well, this isn't prison. I've got a cup of tea. Everything's nice, but that. I trust, and I have confidence that we are innately good. It doesn't mean that I don't align myself with it, and that's why I still suffer. But I do trust that it is true, and it's. I mean, we're called upon to verify that for ourselves directly. It's not a belief system. We have to, prove or disprove it for ourselves. But I haven't found anything to suggest that it's not the case. And so when I meet the inmates, when I say to them, you are innately good.
When you say innately, what does that mean? My English ain't my first language.
What would be another word? In your essence?
Inherently?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Inherently?
Inherently.
Yeah. Like if we stripped everything away, what would you be left with? I would say you would be left with your goodness. That's your that's your innermost. Your birthright is another word that I like, which Sokhnir Rinpoche uses. It's our birthright. So it's there for all of us to claim, and nothing can tarnish it, and nothing can. I mean, it doesn't mean open the prison doors and let them all out, because it's not. You still have to respect the limitations. We have to respect whatever challenges and difficulties our limitations are going to place upon us and our relationships with others. So you have to respect that. But that said, there is also the truth of our innate goodness, and I really like being able to say that to them, that they are, and to trust it from that when I'm saying it, it's true. But I mean, you've said, like, I mean, we're all here. We've all chosen to come here. We all want to listen to this. So going back to that question, it's like, why are you here? Why have you turned up? So we're already looking for that. We're already a little bit like, maybe. That's very precious and rare. So it's kind of easy. Like it's kind of like preaching to the choir, really. I mean, I'm here because it's helping me. It's helping me to kind of think about it and chew it. And I'd give a great talk 6 or 8 hours from now, because it would all be percolating. I go, gee, but that's how it works. It's like we come together and we can nourish each other and help it to grow. With the inmates, a lot of the time, it's really just about bearing witness to them. It's really just about not judging them and not expecting. Just being able to stay in the room. I mean, some of the stories, they can be really, really harrowing, and like it's just the ability, like I was saying earlier, about our ability to just stay with the suffering. You can't fix it. There's an aspect of it that is beyond fixing. But if we truly inhabit that, that's what frees us as well. I love what Mingyur Rinpoche talked about. He had severe anxiety for a very long time, and he eventually did practice, like went into long-term retreat, and got to the point where he thought, I mean, he honestly at times he thought he would die. His anxiety was so severe. But he had what he called, he stayed with it. He just sort of turned towards it rather than trying to run from it. And he had what he called a nervous breakthrough rather than a nervous breakdown. So I don't know if I've answered your question at all.
Great story. Thank you, Ben. Thanks for sharing. And speaking of discussion, I posed a question to the group, and for those who are here in person, hello, I'll give you some paper to write on, or of course you're also welcome to just share as well. So the question to the group is, what challenges do you face in practicing opening your heart? So what you could do is just pop it into the chat, or you can unmute yourself. And for those in the audience, you don't have to unmute yourself. You could just go ahead and say, or you can write it on a piece of paper that will be made available to you. And then Venerable, what we used to do is then I will tell you what their responses are, and we would appreciate some advice through that. And we've already got some answers coming through, which is fantastic, and I'll share them with you shortly. So for everyone, the question again is, what challenges do you face in practicing opening your heart? I can just have the paper and over there for me. Thank you. And feel free to just write on that and pass that to me. Okay, so Venerable, ready?
Ready.
Great. Okay. All right. The first one, which is really lovely, this is someone who has responded to say one of the challenges that he faces is fear of judgment. And that's something that, Venerable, you just touched on briefly just now when in talking about your story when you deal with prisoners. So fear of judgment, what can we do when practicing opening our heart and judgment comes up?
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at these and looking at there's a common word in all of this, and that's fear. The fear of judgment, I think, it's a very, very deep one. And I'm assuming that you're meaning being judged by others, but it's also about judging ourselves. It's, you know, I would say we're our own harshest judges. And part of it is like, we have we're social animals. We belong to each other. So our sense of community is really important to us. And so that sense of like what will come with the judgment is rejection. So there's a sense of that can feel counterintuitive. But at wherever you're meeting it, wherever the edge is, it's finding that edge, and that might not be out there with the community. It may be the story that you're telling yourself that's keeping it going. And really, these are our greatest teachers. So I guess what we also have to accept is that we're not going to fix everything. So when we do this idea of like going out and opening the heart and, you know, we're all going to be okay by the end of it, that might not happen. But it's our willingness to keep coming back, keep opening every time because you will have a sense of it's going to bring up the resistance. It's going to bring up fear will contract. So it's just about noticing, leaning into, being curious about where that edge is, and kind of getting under the storyline. Because if it is, when you talk about fear of judgment, and for each of us, it's going to be it'll be very specific. Just be curious about how it really is showing up. What are the specifics of it? And so do that in a meditative practice. And it's not just the story, but it's also like, where is it happening in my body? I mean, I'll give an example. Today, I'm house sitting, and I've got a lovely cat that I'm looking after. And so it's kind of new to me, changing cat litter. It's not something I've done for a long time. So I'm out there changing the cat litter, and I'm scooping into the poop. And then I suddenly notice it's like, I've got this really, like I'm eating sour lemon's face. And my body's tense. And I just kind of stopped and I thought, what's this got to do with cleaning the cat litter? Like all of this is not helping. It's not needed. And it's happening without me being aware of it. But the minute you become aware of all of that, those layers that we add on top, which aren't necessary and which aren't helping, then you can relax and let it go and just go, oh, there you go. Didn't need to have my face screwed up. That didn't actually help. So it's just about noticing it and doing it in, like, we've got very, very deep old habits of self-protection. We've practiced this for a very, very, very long time. And so we have to be very kind and patient with ourselves and actually be happy to see it. And then just keep turning towards it. Don't go with the big stuff to begin with. You just, find small little irritations, small little contractions, just noticing them and just turning, going, oh, just be curious. Like a child who's told that there's a monster under the bed. So you can lie in bed all the time going, oh my God, there's a monster. Or you could get out and look under the bed and see what the monster looks like. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Venerable, sounds like a lot of courage is also needed in this practice as well. And perhaps also that courage to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, courage comes from the French word heart. Yeah. So yeah, it's that movement of the heart, and absolutely vulnerability too. That like the opening, it is vulnerable. It's also tender, which is quite lovely. So I would say, you know, again, it comes back to like, don't be afraid of our pain. Don't be afraid of our discomfort, of our vulnerability. It's something very precious. It's like it's our heart.
Everyone, please excuse me. I better go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for joining.
Nice to meet you.
Guys,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
guys behind me have some questions. So
Yeah, we do.
yeah.
So we've got more. So Venerable, the next one is fear of achievement, lack
Wow.
of trust in myself. And by the way, if anyone has provided any of these comments or questions, if you want to add to it, feel free to unmute yourself and you can add to it as well. Okay.
Yeah, Matt, tell me about fear of achievement. What would happen if you achieved? What do you mean by achievement? Lack of trust in yourself, but lack of trust in yourself and fear of achievement at the same time. Please explain. If you would like, don't worry. If you don't want to, that's fine too. Yep.
Is it related, Matt, to fear of failure? So if you have achievement, there's also the fear of failure or disappointment.
Yeah, that would be true, yes, as well.
I think it's also like a pattern of like sabotaging our own achievement or not acknowledging your own achievement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the sabotaging, that's another really core aspect to, I mean, we're fascinating. We're like, as I said, it goes back to the that earlier thing I said, you know, 10 people could say you're great. You're absolutely great. And one goes, I'm not sure about you. And that's the one we gravitate towards. And we do the same in our own internal dialogue. And so it's just this, it's a self-repeating loop. And it's, so Sokni Rinpoche, who I'd mentioned, I mentioned Mingyur Rinpoche, and Sokni Rinpoche talks about our birthright. But he refers to our monsters, and our monsters being our fear of achievement, our sabotaging, all of the things that limit us and keep us tight and closed. He refers to them as our beautiful monsters, and beautiful in the sense that, again, if we turn towards them, there's something really rich there. There's an incredible depth, and like there's something that will open up if we just turn towards it. And it, again, as I've said earlier, you start with the small things, because you know, developing courage, being vulnerable. We've got to like take baby steps with it. And so choose something, like if let's say anger is my main negativity, that might be too hard to start with. So I'll pick something that I'm less driven by, that I'm less out of control with, and just work with that, turning towards that. Like if I'm quite generous, sort of easily generous, but then I notice little areas where I'm like, oh, you know, I'll have the biggest slice and I'll offer you the smallest one. Just noticing what our mind is doing to sabotage ourselves. But the moment that we start to notice it, we're already outside of being controlled by it. It can still be happening and we can still be very uncomfortable with it. But as we change our perspective towards it, then it starts to lose its power over us, because we're not identifying ourselves by it. We're moving from saying, I am angry, to there is anger in my mind. And we start to, because we'll begin to notice as we turn towards it with curiosity, we'll start to see that even though it presents itself as this solid, permanent thing. This is who I am. This is what I'm identifying myself by. But when we turn to examine it, we get to see that it's like, it's in essence, it's an illusion, but that doesn't mean that that it's suddenly going to stop having control over you. But it starts to, it's on the run. Yeah. So being uncomfortable, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It is okay to not be okay. But it's just seeing it and turning towards it again and again.
Thank you, Venerable. Okay, the next one is how do we open the heart when we have stress, anxiety, fears, worries, etc. that cloud the heart and the opening of it?
So that's what you open your heart to. You open your heart to that stress, to that anxiety, to that fear, to that worry, to that clouding. You turn your attention towards that with the curiosity, with an interest. The opening of the heart is, it's not just about towards others. It has to start with ourselves. So it's about recognizing what within our own, what we're limiting ourselves by. That's where the real work happens. I mean, we can be working on our own minds and we can do it on behalf of others. So that's what, if you set your motivation at the beginning, just going to focus on my own stuff here, but I'm going to do it so that I can go out and be of benefit to others. Yeah. Like I think it might be, again, maybe just someone talks about if you have the wish to be a doctor, you don't just go rushing out and going, I've got to open my heart to help all these people. Look, the hospitals are full. They need me. It's like, well, yeah, but do you know how to use a scalpel? Until you're really skilled with that, you can stay away from me. Thank you very much. So working on ourselves is not selfish. It's actually, again, it's clever selfishness. If we're doing it with the intention and the wish to benefit others, to open our heart to others, first we have to open our heart to our own, to where we close it down to ourselves. And it's just, again, recognizing it and again, working with the smaller things to begin with.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. The next comes from someone here in the audience, and it's, again, fear. So
Yeah.
again, this comes up.
Yeah.
Fear, lack of safety.
Yeah. Is there a little more on the lack of safety?
That's it. Unless you want to add.
Yeah.
Lack of safety in terms of everyone that's done on me, for example,
Something?
as in like dump their emotions.
Oh, okay.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. There will be resistance. There will be, I guess, maybe some of this is alleviated by, again, accepting the truth of suffering, that we can't make everything better. And so if we can be comfortable with the discomfort, and also know when to take breaks from it. Like if you're talking about relationships with other people where there's like, you can get stuck quite easily. And especially with people that we've got, like family and friends that we've known for a very long time. Oh my goodness, the enmeshed stories that are there. I mean, I've just come back from Ireland, and that's where my family of origin are from, and I came across a few family members where the story line was just straight back in there, and my emotions were completely thrown. I'm still, like, when I think of, I only had a few interactions with a couple of people, and the emotional reactivity that's happened in me as a response, I'll be working with it for quite a while. But again, if I don't get lost in the story of it, and I just kind of start to just pay attention to how it's showing up. So if you're with somebody, for example, and all of that's happening, and you're out of control, and you just come away and you go, oh, that was a mess. Then you can sit with the mess sit with how the mess is showing up now that you're away from the situation.
Yeah.
And start to pay attention to how it shows up in your body, in your mind, in your emotions, when you're sitting in a safe place away from it, because it's still triggering.
Mhm.
But as you pay attention to how it's showing up now, this is present. This is how it is. I'm here. I'm in the present. And your body will give you a lot of information about how that's what happens when that story starts to play out. But the more that we start to anchor it again in a present, we bring it into present awareness. And then it starts to, so it's a little bit like that again. There's the story and there's all the reactivity while you're in there and it's all happening. But then later you can start to just open, oh, sorry, you weren't here. I was showing that example earlier. Like we're trying to keep it all together, trying to keep all the contents of the mind, of the relationship, of it all, keep it all happening. Which is exhausting, and it'll never end. But if you just, this is resting in open awareness, it becomes an open spaciousness. The mess is still there, but you're not clinging or grasping or trying to figure it out. You're just holding it in a more spacious, open awareness. But that's about like, so if you bring to mind a situation that you have been triggered by, and then you just go, okay, so let's see where it's showing up, and let's see, even like if you say, oh, it's anger, then you go, okay, so then you start to examine the components of what you're calling anger, and it starts to, you just start to see that it's made up of all of these different causes and conditions, and it's constantly moving and changing. Does that help? Yeah.
Thank you, Venerable. And while we're here in the room, we've got another one.
Yeah.
She'd like
There's
to say
hundreds of people here, people.
Actually, I came more to listen and relax, but yeah, I can
Yeah.
also like more comments, like when you mention opening heart to all self. Like sometimes I feel like how you can open a heart if you don't have anyone to open or to discuss your feeling. Like having that ability to open your heart to yourself, to understand, to feel like your reaction to things, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if this, your question makes me think of, particularly during COVID, when we were all sort of shutting down into our little, we were,
Yeah.
and I became more aware of, like, when I would go out into supermarkets or whatever, and I'm trying to look at people and trying to connect and trying to, like, as you say, like trying to open out to others. And again, just noticing what, I mean, sometimes the other person's just not going to look at me.
Yeah.
And that's where, I mean, I can't judge that, or I can't judge my open-heartedness based on other people's responses. And that's tricky, because that goes back to the earlier question of judgment. Like if I look at someone and smile and they look at me cross, I'm going to come up with a story. There's going to be a story, but it's my story.
I know.
It's got nothing to do with that person.
Yeah.
And so again, the closing that's happening isn't in them looking at me and scowling. The closing is happening in my story. And so that's what I have to open. That's what I have to be vulnerable towards and tender towards, and go, okay, sweetheart. So just notice that your heart just went right there. So let's just, you can talk to yourself about it. You can dialogue with yourself. It doesn't have to be words. It can be the dialogue, and the relationship can be your willingness to turn towards it, and to just, again, in meditation, to just go, oh, just going to have a look at how all of that's showing up. To recognize it, yeah. And then turn towards it with a curiosity. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I really love that analogy with the mala beads and what you said
Yeah.
about it. And I wonder whether a lot of these fears may be arising because it's also fear of losing that control.
Yeah.
And losing that sense of I've got it under control, all of this mess.
Yeah.
And so opening the heart and opening up to all of the mess that may be inside and the triggers, that can be quite daunting for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, fear is the energy of ego. And again, Jitsuma often said the ego is very happy being miserable. And in fact, but again, we've got to come back to the innate goodness, which is that this thing doesn't exist. The ego, it's feeding. If you think of that child in the bed who's sitting there terrified because under the bed there is a monster, and I go, well, have a good look. And if you search thoroughly, you say, oh, there was never a monster. But it's my belief in it, my fear of it, that's keeping it going. That's the only thing that's keeping it going. Again, saying this is very easy. Experiencing it and getting it is a life's work. Absolutely a life's work, if we're lucky.
And that comes to the next one, which is, whilst I can understand all these teachings, all in theory, in reality, I find it very difficult to fight my habitual reactivity, especially when I feel threatened or a need to defend myself. Sometimes it feels like an itch that needs to be scratched. And it happens so fast that sometimes when I catch myself, it is already too late. What do you suggest, Venerable, in real time?
Welcome to the club. Yeah, I mean, it is all like it's very, very, very fast. So I don't think that we're going to catch much of it in real time. It's a bit like learning to drive in the fast lane in the highway. So our formal practice, our sitting back in our cushions in a nice controlled environment and, turning up to things like this is fabulous. This really, really helps. So for you to ask that question in this situation is already starting to unravel it. It's already starting to put it on the run. But we do need to have compassion. And if we do have compassion for those moments when we go, oh my God, I really blew it. And then you turn towards that thought, turn towards that judgment, which is again coming from, there is a me that's not able to do this. And again, that's a denial of your innate goodness. So if there's so many things that we can do, and all of the Dharma, all of the access to these teachings, it's all going to dissolve it and unravel it, because the power of truth, even if you just have a moment or two during the day where you kind of have a little bit of a breakthrough. I mean, my breakthrough today was unscrewing my face while I was dealing with the cat litter. It doesn't have to be all noble and holy. It's not. You're going to find it in those little breakthrough moments. I'm like, wow, I can really soften my face. And then the story started to really shift. I was like, how amazing that there's this place where the cat can poop. And it's designated. I'm not going to find poop on the carpet, not always, there I have done, but in general. So the story can start to shift and there can be more appreciation. And it gets bigger and bigger. I have a lovely house that I'm looking after for 3 months. It's a beautiful house. And I get to clean up cat poop as part of being in this lovely space. So it's just all of that. If we shut down into this idea of poor little separate me, which we all do all the time, then it's inevitable. We're going to bump up against things all the time. So we just recognize it, and take joy when you recognize it, even if it's once or twice a day. So then at the end, you can kind of go, okay, how did today go? And just you know, if you can pull out 1 or 2 points, remembering this is the power of truth. So it is, even if they feel like very, very small moments, they're really transformative. And again, Jetsumi uses the analogy of yeast in dough. It just needs a really tiny amount, but it completely transforms this heavy stuff into a beautiful, light, fluffy thing. Okay, Winnie, does that help?
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Venerable.
So be patient,
Mm.
you know, be really like, be patient.
Mm.
That's a bit like if you plant a garden and you understand the laws of botany, you're not going to plant and then go out the next day and go, where's the tomato?
Mm.
You just know it looks the same. It looks like nothing's happening, but within there's really wonderful shifts happening. So trust that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Venerable. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you all. I mean, really, it's always just, yeah, gives me the opportunity to start to think about the teachings, and yeah, really
Yeah.
helps. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, what we like to do here is try to make the teachings real and something that we can practice in our day to day.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And for those online and those here as well, if you want to continue the discussions, of course, you're welcome to come every Wednesday night, but also we have a WhatsApp forum as well. So if you want to join our WhatsApp group, we keep each other updated and have chats there too. So there's a little bit of a message there too in the chat as well. So Venerable, can I invite you for a dedication of merits and closing?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as many moments as we have had here have been sowing powerful seeds. And even though we're, you know, there's not a huge amount of people here when you consider how many people there are in the world, but we're here as their representatives. And so there's a lot of responsibility with that. But yeah, hold it lightly. Don't panic. But we do have the capacity to expand it out and to support our future practice, and also to support whoever we come in contact with. So you just have that expansive view, and it can be considering your own future suffering based on past habits, opening your heart to that, and then just opening it out to consider that just like us, all others are the same in wanting to be free of suffering. So by the power of this compassionate practice, may suffering be transformed into peace. May the hearts of all beings be opened and their wisdom radiate from within. And one of the words I didn't use, but it's a really important word, is equanimity. You know, that's born of wisdom as well, an equanimity that's able to stay even and be with whatever comes, good, bad, up, down. Just to be equanimous is a very valuable and powerful practice too. Yep. So thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Venerable.
you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Venerable. And thank you to everyone who participated today. Thank you for your questions and comments. Always so lovely to have this group together. And I look forward to having you next week. Next week, we have Venerable Bonhom Sunim, who will be talking about how do we deal with when, why is it so hard to let go of our sense of being wrong? So yes, I hope you can join us for that today.
Yeah.
On Wednesday. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Have a good night. Bye.